Hello, fabulous friends, fans, and superstars. Welcome to your horoscope for the week of November 29, 2020. I am your astrologer, Nadiya Shah. Thank you for being here. What a remarkable week it is. And of course, it is all about the very important lunar eclipse in the sign of Gemini, set to take place right around Monday for most people on the planet. Now, it is this very important lunar eclipse that represents, on the one hand, closure. That is part of what lunar eclipses bring. But the eclipse is going to be speaking in harmony with Chiron. And this is a type of conversation that astrologers call a sextile. And it represents motivation. And through action, we are rewarded. Chiron is an energy that has to do with the wounded healer. That is who Chiron was, mythologically speaking. But this energy ultimately encourages us to identify where it is that meaningful healing needs to take place. What work is it that we must do if we are going to heal the wounds of the past? With this lunar eclipse activating the North Node, because it is the North Node that is in the sign of Gemini right now. We had an eclipse here almost to the day 8 years ago, but at that time it was the South Node that was in the sign of Gemini. Now the nodes are, I think, so important where it comes to understanding fated moments, fated events, and what I like to describe or articulate as a higher, more loving vision for our lives. And so the South Node is what we are sort of putting our back towards. It is harder to access the higher vibration of the sign that the South Node is in. And we see this on a collective level as well. But it is the North Node that seeks to inspire us to elevate, to access the higher vibration of the sign that it is in. For the collective, yes, but also your own birth chart can give you some insights into that as well. And so it is now, as the North Node in Gemini is activated with this very powerful lunar eclipse, that wounds, sensitivities, vulnerabilities may surface. In some way, we may feel exposed, but it is through language that we may heal. It is through speaking that we may heal. Gemini is the energy that has to do with sharing, sometimes spontaneously. It has to do with articulation and also perception. I was having a conversation recently about how important it is to be mindful of the phrases that we repeat in our minds constantly or day in and day out, because these phrases determine what we then perceive. And what we perceive then determines what we believe our potential is. And what we believe about our potential very often determines what we end up experiencing, what we end up living. Now, this is not an absolute, in my humble opinion, but I do think that there is a lot to be gained and truly powerful transformation that is able to take place if we are diligent with our thoughts. If we choose to think differently, to repeat phrases that are essentially mantras. These phrases that we repeat again and again, whether you want to call them affirmations or mantras, they can either affirm a more elevated sense of self, of others, or not. They can take us in another direction. This lunar eclipse is going to invite all of us in some way or another to look at what it is that we are saying, what messages are there going out. And this is deeply personal on the one hand. Yes, the messages that we repeat, but I'm also thinking about how what we choose to pay attention to, right? The information that we consume, how that can determine our reality. And where it is that when we ask for better, very often the universe responds, and very often we think it's the universe responding, but really it's us and the choices that we are making. And so I do think for the collective and on a collective level, And the sign of Gemini has to do and has a correlation to the media. And I do think that we are collectively going to be looking at the role of media in different countries, in different societies, and attempting to bring a more holistic perspective there, a more healed perspective there. But personally, for each of us, we are going to be having this lunar eclipse somewhere. I did speak about this eclipse at some length in the monthly horoscope, so you may want to review that because it is now that the energy is especially active. And it is with this lunar eclipse that there are going to be closures. That's the thing with eclipses. They eclipse the past. They force us in some way to align with a higher, more loving vision for our lives, even if it doesn't seem like it on the surface. Even if what is leaving now seems undesirable, seems like we don't want it to end or we don't want it to leave, we don't want this chapter to be over. And yet, on a soul level, we know that it's necessary. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is that Gemini is an air sign, and air signs tend to have healthy detachment. They're not so immersed as other signs might be. And in this way, they're able to see many sides of a given situation or a given perspective and able to cultivate greater rationality as they choose the best answers for them. Now, this isn't a perfect science, right? And what I mean by that is you may know air signs in your life and you think, well, that person doesn't always make decisions that are especially rational. But the thing is, they're able to recognize what is a rational decision and maybe what isn't. And in that space, able to make their choices more consciously. On the one hand, we have this lunar eclipse that is inviting us to consider where it is that perhaps we've become too immersed in a given perspective, in a given opinion, to see things as clearly or as rationally or as with healthy perspective as perhaps might actually be good for us, might be useful to us. And it can also be the case that at this time, we are granted another way to consider things. And I look at this energy and I feel like there are going to be a few people out there who find themselves maybe taken aback as they recognize or realize that perhaps they do need to cultivate a greater sense of perspective, that could be a good thing. And whether that perspective is related to a personal situation in their own lives or in one area of life, whether it's related to how they're perceiving larger events, that could be one gift of this time. But there's something else that's happening almost simultaneously. And that is both Jupiter and Saturn are now moving into what is known as anorectic degrees. So that means they're moving into the very end of the sign of Capricorn. And it is going to be in 3 weeks' time that these two planets are going to move into the sign of Aquarius, a hyper-rational sign. And I do think that it is going to be at that great conjunction, right? As Michael Barwick and I have called it, the Star of Hope. It's not that we've called it that. It has been called that traditionally. The ancients have called it that. This sense of a dream embodied. This sense of a more hopeful future manifesting, becoming realized. That is what we have right around the corner. But before we get there, chances are we are going to be feeling in some ways a little bit more immersed in emotion or in energy. But some of the really great ways to use this energy as Jupiter and Saturn move into anorectic degree. Saturn is already there. Jupiter is now headed there. One of the great ways to use this is to contemplate how far we've come. And with Capricorn, what we have manifested, what we have demonstrated. Have we lived in a way that allows us to be truly rooted in healthy self-respect? Have we done the things that we promised ourselves that we would do? That is the higher intention and the higher realization of the energy of Capricorn. And so now we are moving slowly, not so slowly, because it is going to feel rather sudden. I know that for some, 3 weeks may feel slow, but with energy like this, with this lunar eclipse, it may feel like things move really fast. When we have an eclipse, they always come in pairs, at least. Sometimes you get 3, right? Like we did in the middle of the year. But this time we get 2, the pair, and it is the time between 2 eclipses, 2 weeks apart, that the ancients considered a portal between the worlds, that the veils between the worlds were especially thin, that it was easier to access the wisdom of our ancestors, to recognize the spiritual lessons playing out in our lives. It was easier to see things from a higher perspective and to see where perhaps even circumstances that are challenging, that are difficult, that we wish were different, perhaps there is some wisdom playing out there that we can recognize, that we can tap into. That is what the period between eclipses grants us. It can feel like karma quickens at this time. So like, for example, it is said, I know when I was growing up, it said, if you were talking about somebody and then they call you the next day or the week after, it means that that person is going to have a long life. That's something that we used to say in our house. Now, imagine having a thought about somebody that you haven't thought about in 5 years and then almost instantaneously getting a message from them. That is how quickly things can work in a period between eclipses. And that's just one example. But there are a myriad of ways in which it can feel like things are quickening, that the lessons are reaching us that much more. And for those of us who feel ourselves to be older souls, this process becomes especially accelerated, where we start to realize the person that we were before, if we're packing in several lifetimes into one, which is something that I talk about from time to time, because I believe that the older soul that one is, the more lifetimes they're packing into one. So the things that used to take us 100 lifetimes to figure out, the karma to resolve, well, very often we can do it now in a few years or less sometimes. And this is why I think in much of the world now, it is very common to have many major relationships over the course of a lifetime. There was a time when that was really not common. That did not happen, period. It is very common to have several careers over the course of a lifetime. There was a time when that too was very uncommon, a time not long ago. You graduated high school, you got a corporate job, you stayed in that job for 25 years, and then you retired, and that was it. That was the norm in much of the world. That is not the case anymore. We are very often asked to learn new things, to take on new skills, to relocate even. And I think that that is a sign that we are more capable of demonstrating more than we have before, of learning more than we have before. And so now we have this lunar eclipse taking place in the sign of Gemini. This is a young energy. It is the energy of youth and the enthusiasm, the engagement, the spontaneity, the presence, being in the present that this sign represents. What is it within us that needs to heal so that we can be truly in this moment? And what is it that when we heal, it frees us to be more joyous, to be more childlike, but in a different way, and to begin again in key ways? One of the mantras that I repeat to myself actually very often is that I have a lot more to do in this lifetime. I've got a whole lot more to do in this lifetime. I repeat that to myself often. I repeat that to myself anytime I'm spooked or scared of anything. I do that. And that is a mantra that I have said to myself again and again. I remember as a child, I used to say that I wanted to live till I was 150 years old. And the reason is because even though I feel that I have lived many lives and will again, that there's something eternal and everlasting within us, that is beyond the shell of our skin and our appearance. I would love to have one life where I get to see it all. I get to remember it all. I get to know that I lived, and I lived fully, and I experienced everything that I wanted to in a single life. So I can identify all the growth I had in that single life. I want to pack in several lifetimes, but into a single life. So I've got a lot more to do in this lifetime. That is my favorite mantra that I use a lot. And in many ways, all of the signs remind us of this in their own way. The sign of Gemini reminds us to be present. It reveals what it is to have a fresh mind. It shows us something about beginning again and renewal. And with a lunar eclipse, that sense of things changing very quickly so that they can free us in healthy ways, that can happen lightning fast under a sky like this, where it is that we didn't realize that we were holding on to wounds that were weighing us down or getting in our way, where it was that the wounds of the past were affecting how much we were able to live in the present now, enjoy the day now. That may be illuminated at this time. I did want to share one example with you when I looked at this particular lunar eclipse. And I'm going to give you a spoiler alert here, okay? I'm going to talk about the end of Mr. Robot season 4, so the last episodes of Mr. Robot. So if it is that you've been saving that show, it would be a good idea to kind of jump ahead a little bit. I loved the ending. So now here we go. Here's the spoiler. At the end, I loved it. And what I found, like when I watched this, and it took me a little while to really sit with it and understand, like, okay, what is going on? What was the journey? You know, I actually watched the episode like 3 times back to back to understand the journey that Elliot, the main character, took. Elliot, played by Rami Malek, one of my favorite contemporary actors. And so what I felt was that at the end, what was revealed was that whom it is that we knew as Mr. Robot wasn't actually who Elliot is. And that very often, whom it is that we think we are is the result of what our trauma has made us. But on the other side of that trauma, once we do that work to heal, that is where we find our true selves. That is where we find whom it is that we really are, whom it is that we were created to be in a more pure sense. And so you spend this whole series thinking that you're looking at somebody and this is who they are. They're Elliot, aka Mr. Robot. But that's not really it. This is an expression of trauma. The true Elliot emerges at the end, beyond that. And so as I looked at this energy of this lunar eclipse, and I know that that is quite the dramatic example, so I think the spoiler alert warning is now over. I know that that's kind of a dramatic example, but I do think that what we find now is that sense of, okay, what does it look like? What does my life look like? What would I think like on the other side of the things that have hurt me? Whether you call it trauma, whether you call it pain, whether you call it disappointment, whether you call it regret. Who am I without that? Or rather, who am I on the other side of that? Because ultimately, even that can make us better. Even that can make us more compassionate, more wise, and more loving if we choose. But we have to choose it. Now, thankfully, with a week like this, we've got other things that are taking place that I think are going to support and help us to make sense of this really big lunar eclipse energy. So one of them has to do with Mercury. Mercury is the ruling planet of the eclipse in Gemini. It rules Gemini, the eclipse is in Gemini. Therefore, what's happening with Mercury becomes more important in the days surrounding the eclipse. At the very beginning of the week, we are going to have Mercury speaking in harmony with Jupiter. Remember, Jupiter is moving towards the end of the sign of Capricorn. And it is going to be under the light of the lunar eclipse that Mercury will connect with Saturn, also concentrated in the sky in an anorectic degree. And it is Mercury now moving through the sign of Scorpio. And Scorpio is an energy of truth, of authenticity, of renewal. And it too has a varied expression like all signs do, but in its higher understanding, it is the energy of Scorpio that invites us to be truly authentic, to honor what we feel, to learn from what we feel, and to do the work, to walk the journey that being reborn in a single life and packing in several lifetimes into one can sometimes take. And so right now with this Mercury speaking to these big, powerful players in a powerful place in the sky, well, it does suggest that the willingness to change, the willingness to transform, to ask those questions, to do that work is there. We may attract very spontaneous, synchronistic moments that invite us to do that work and to make that change. And then on the other side of the eclipse, right around Tuesday or Wednesday, depending on where you are on the planet, Mercury will change signs, finally leaving the sign of Scorpio. Mercury's been moving in and out of the sign of Scorpio since late September, an unusually long time. But now we'll move into the sign of Sagittarius. And this is important for a few reasons. One reason is that it is going to be 2 weeks after the lunar eclipse that we are going to have the solar eclipse. That solar eclipse will be hand in hand with Mercury in the sky. So this begins the slow process there, or perhaps quick process there. But it is now, as Mercury changes signs, that on the one hand, we are invited to see things and perceive things and to speak of things more optimistically, right? To cultivate genuine enthusiasm and a spirit of adventure. That is part of the Sagittarian energy. But I think what's also likely to happen is that Mercury invites us to express, to speak, to put into words. One of the reasons that therapy is so powerful is that it takes what we feel and invites us to give it language, to put it into words. So it lifts that energy that sometimes can be sort of in the lower chakras, if you will. And by lifting it to the mind, we make sense of it. And then that energy, as it is shifting, as we are making sense of it, can then changed reach our heart. And that is one of the ways to understand a therapeutic process. And so now with Mercury in the sign of Sagittarius, it isn't just enough to feel it and to have the intuitive understanding, but now it becomes about raising the energy, about being willing to see things more optimistically and considering what our next adventure might be. To look forward, to look ahead. That is part of the Sagittarian energy. And it is now that the ideas start to come that will lend themselves to big and powerful changes, shifts, surprise, new, out of the blue opportunities that can change everything. Well, that is coming up in 2 weeks' time with the Sagittarius new moon solar eclipse. And I'll be here to talk about it every step of the way. Now, also this week, we are going to end this week with a beautiful energy of Venus speaking in supreme harmony with Neptune in a type of conversation that astrologers call a trine. Now, this energy is just magical. It is romantic. It is beautiful. It is misty and soft and lovely and glamorous. All of that is what this energy is. It is Venus that is moving through the sign of Scorpio as well at the moment. And so this is where I do think that some of that honesty, some of that inner work, that willingness to feel, to raise energy so that it can then settle into the heart, this is where the benefits come in. This energy can be very artistic, very inspired, very creative. It can also be magical. And where it is that we are willing to trust our hearts to align us with a higher, more beautiful magic than we've known before, we're able to attract blessings that much easier with this beautiful connection, this romantic connection of Venus and Neptune. What I love about this week for us, of course, the eclipse, the lunar eclipse, this very powerful energy is part of the beginning of the end of the year. So we are now transitioning. We are moving towards the end of 2020, a rare year, yes. 2021 has its share as well. That's going to be a fun all its own. But at least for now, this is where we start to understand, or at least begin to talk about, some of the things that we've experienced in the past. I was thinking about this year, 2020, and how in many ways some of the experiences that we've had collectively have been challenging. Some would even say traumatizing, and there is grief. There is grief that you can feel. Now, how to integrate that grief, how to process that grief. I think that is part of what we are going to see now. Some shining examples may come forward that invite us to more deeply process what has been a very difficult year, a traumatic year. But in many ways, now is when the processing of it can begin. Because very quickly, very soon, the energy will shift. In 3 weeks' time, all that Aquarian energy starts to come in, and we, as a collective around the world, are going to be focused on the future, focused on a more balanced perspective, emphasizing rationality. And I think that can actually be a great gift for many of us. Now, I'll have a lot more to say about that, but for this week, what I will say is that shift, that sense that we now are rounding the end, that a new day is coming, that will really start to set in with this lunar eclipse. It is a powerful time. It is an important time that invites us to put into words the depth of feeling, of disappointment, of grief, of wounds that have been there. And in speaking it, we transform it into something, a force that can align us with greater love and greater wisdom as well. Well, thank you so much for watching. What do you love about this week? Let me know in the comments below. I love reading you guys. And to prove it to you, here are some of my recent favorite comments on my channel. Thank you so much to everybody who interacts. You like, you subscribe, you share, you comment. It all means so much to me. Thank you. I have had very big announcements taking place over the course of this weekend. It is, of course, Black Friday, Cyber Monday weekend, and it has been 5 days of surprises and of specials. And the first day was the announcement of 2 very, very special Synchronicity University programs that are coming up that I think you guys are absolutely going to love. I think some of you might actually go crazy over, might just have so much excitement over. We are about to learn from some of the most brilliant minds in astrology today. And so we have a brand new speaker series that is going to be coming up in January. You can register for as low as $5 a class by choosing your own tuition rate before the end of the year. And all of the classes that I'm about to mention are choose your own tuition rate being ongoing right now. And so what we are going to have is some brilliant speakers bringing together my vision of having the future voices of astrology and the big dogs of astrology on the same stage. And we have got perhaps the biggest astrologer. I know I shouldn't play favorites because all of my speaker series guests are incredible, and I have celebrated and learned from and loved them all. But I couldn't believe he said yes, that he's going to join us, and that is the great, the only, the living legend, Michael Lutin. Now, Michael Lutin is an award-winning, preeminent astrologer. He wrote the horoscopes for Vanity Fair for 25 years. He has a huge following. He has a very unique voice. He's so creative, so insightful, so brilliant. And I, as a professional astrologer, have paid to attend his workshops. Like, that's how good he is. And he's just brilliant. And he is going to be with us to celebrate the Tibetan New Year in February. And That is really exciting. Like, I jumped out of my seat when he said yes. I couldn't believe it. And so just for Michael Luton, like to be able to hear Michael Luton for $5, like that is incredible. That is unheard of. And yes, you can now do it by joining the January 2021 Speaker Series. But we've got other incredible people as well. We have Alex Trenoweth. Now, Alex Trenoweth is the author of several books, and she is an astrological specialist on youth and childhood and adolescence. She's been a teacher for many years. She too has spoken all over the world. She's incredibly accomplished. And I was so happy to have her on board as well. So she'll be teaching a class. We also have the preeminent evolutionary astrologer, Patricia Walsh. We actually got Patricia Walsh as well under the same speaker series, which is incredible. And she as well is an author, and she's going to be speaking about Pluto generations. So helping us to understand and identify what the different Pluto signs and what it says about your generation. So she'll be looking at generations that are alive today. Plus, I did ask her and convinced her to look ahead a little bit and look at what Pluto in Aquarius and in Pisces might say about future generations as well. So we'll see if she does that. I gave it to her as a suggestion, but she did promise that she would look at all generations alive today, their Pluto signs and what that means. So it's very usable right away. And evolutionary astrology is very powerful. It is very spiritual, and it focuses on the growth and evolution of the soul, collectively with Pluto, but individually as well. So we'll be looking at that. And then we have our incredible future voices that I'm so very excited about. Akila Moon. You may have seen her like in my Instagram stories. I've met her a couple of times. She came out to Cancun. I'm in Cancun right now. So she was here on holiday, and I met her and we talked, and we talked astrology, and she was just so brilliant. She's brilliant, she's insightful, she's beautiful. She's made videos for my channels before as well. So you have gotten to know her. Akila will be speaking about Venus and Vesta, love, sex, and money, or something like that. I mean, it's going to be heavy duty, but it's going to be fun as well. And so I'm really looking forward to learning from her and the connections she's made between and with Venus and Vesta, the asteroid. So that's a very unique perspective and a lot to learn and gain there. And then we have Candace April. Now, Candace is going to be speaking on the Uranus-Saturn square playing out over 2021 and what that says for us as a collective. And I have met her as well a couple of times. I met her in at Lilydale actually years ago, and she has such a light. She's been very determined in how she shares her love of tarot and astrology. I've just watched her grow online and shine brighter and brighter over the last few years that I've known her. And I'm just so looking forward to learning from her and seeing her shine in this new way. And so, yes, $5 a class, or as low as $5 a class, would choose your own tuition rate. In operation right now, active right now. You can click on the link in the description below or visit synchronicityuniversity.com. Now, the other very big news that I'm so very excited about, and this is like so exciting. My dear friend, Michael Barwick, taught a class with Synchronicity University on fixed stars. It was perhaps the most popular class that I have taught, or I have hosted, right? I didn't teach it. He taught it. I hosted it. I said hello and welcome. I introduced him. Then he shared his brilliance. And then I navigated some Q&A towards the end. But people absolutely loved that class. So now, here comes Michael. And this winter, he is going to be teaching a 5-part class called Celestial Superpowers. This is all about making the fixed stars connect with you, work for you, understanding the fixed stars in your chart. And he's going to be looking at the big ones. 5 classes in total he is going to be teaching. And again, choose your own tuition rate as low as just $5 a class. And this is going to be such an adventure, an experience that we go on together as we learn about how to interpret different fixed stars, going sign by sign. How do you interpret them? What kind of aspects can be there? How to understand them more deeply astrologically. All of that he's going to cover. And so you can learn a lot about his class as well. And I know that there are going to be a lot of people who sign up for that. On the one hand, because a lot of students have asked for more about fixed stars. On the other hand, it's Michael Barwick. Michael Barwick is brilliant. He's an amazing astrologer. He's like who I consider my astrologer. And he's so insightful and fun to learn from. So you can learn all about celestial superpowers taught by the incredible Michael Barwick by clicking on the link in the description below at synchronicityuniversity.com. And of course, my own classes are going to be coming up in January as well. What I have done over the last 2 years, I've gone through all the planets, like sort of 2 classes per planet, one at a time. Now I'm going to start doing that for the houses. And so this winter, we are going to have 2 classes on the second house. And the second house has to do with money you earn, money you spend, what that says about what you should be doing to earn money, how you can align yourself with prosperity, and so much more. We're going to have the first class on the 8th house. So the 8th house, money, power, respect, it has its financial part of it, but it is so consequential. It has to do with things like trust and bonding and psychology and transformation and rebirth, all these heavy duty things. We're going to start exploring that. We're going to have our first class on Ceres. So Ceres, the asteroid, very important astrologically in 2021. And so we'll be looking at that. Ceres is the mythological Demetra. And Demetra, of course, was the mother of Persephone. And Persephone was the one who hooked up with Hades / Pluto and left her mom. And her mom was like crying and all of that. So we're going to talk about all of that. I know that's a very crude summation of that very beautiful myth. But we're going to start talking about Ceres in the astrology chart. And then the last class we're going to have has to do with astrology and the chakras. So we're going to explore the astrological connections between the chakras and what is happening astrologically as well, their astrological correlation. So if you would like to learn more about that, and again, as low as just $5 a class. Now I have extended that, or I am going to be extending that. I have to email one of my team members to make sure that happens. But what I thought is, because somebody actually reached out and said, Nadiya, I really want to take this class. She has taken classes with me before, and she said, I want to take it, but I'm not actually going to have any money until the middle of December, but I want to take it at that lower rate. And I thought, you know what, let's extend it to the end of December. We're going to have these other classes available for choose your own tuition rate. And so I'm going to make the winter session available at choose your own tuition rate until the end of December as well. Once we get into January, we start the classes. That's when you purchase them at the full price for single classes. But for now, you can choose your own tuition rate. My classes, my speaker series, the incredible people who are going to be teaching at my school, all of it is at synchronicityuniversity.com. Links are in the description below. Speaking of the speaker series, we are going to have our last speaker of the year, and he is the great Frank Clifford, renowned, celebrated astrologer, president of the London School of Astrology. What? He's going to be teaching with us. And he is going to be teaching a really practical class that you can use. This is looking at ascendant midheaven combinations. So your ascendant sign and your midheaven sign. These two together say something about you and about your aspiration and so much more. The combination is especially important. So there are 36 possible combinations, and Frank is going to go through each and every one of them. And so you can still sign up for that. Link in the description below at synchronicityuniversity.com, and that'll be our last speaker until the new year. I look forward to meeting you in class. Myself, I'm going to begin this coming weekend, because this weekend was Thanksgiving weekend for American students, so we didn't have class, but next weekend we are going to have Tarot, Part 3, or rather the Minor Arcana Tarot for Astrologers, Part 1, the first of 2 classes on the Minor Arcana. And so if you would like to join us, and in particular, if you are especially interested in the tarot classes, I will link to it in the description below, because you can purchase just the 4-class package. And right now, our Black Friday / Cyber Monday sale is still going on. And with that sale, I think right now, maybe earlier today, it was announced that all webinars are 50% off. And so that includes the Tarot for Astrologers package as well. So if you'd like to sign up for that package, you can get it right now for half price. And that will give you instant access to the first 2 classes of the major arcana. And now they will give you access to the upcoming 2 classes on the minor arcana. I look forward to meeting you in class. And again, links are in the description below. Now, I will have other very exciting announcements that are going to be taking place this week. Like I said, our sale is ongoing. It's 5 days of discounts. And I've got some big announcements coming up very soon. So I hope that you'll join me. I hope you stay connected on social media and beyond, because it is in these spaces that you get to learn about the new stuff and, maybe learn about something that you would like to be a part of or utilize or to explore, right? And so please do follow the social media stuff below. Sign up for my newsletter on my homepage on my website, nadiyashah.com. I do have books as well, so I'll very quickly mention, I spoke earlier about the nodes. One of my books is on the nodes. It's called The Universe is Wise and Loving. And then I have The Body and the Cosmos. I have a picture back there. And I have books up here too. These are my books over there. And so Prayers to the Sky and Astrology Realized. Links are in the description below, and they're available wherever books are sold. And finally, you can get my unique take on your unique birth chart by logging on and checking out my partnership with Cosmogram. So Cosmogram is this amazing company and people. And what you do is you use the link in the description below. You go onto their website with that link and you enter in your birth data. And within hours, you will be emailed a PDF of the different planetary combinations in your chart and what I think about it, what I wrote about those different planetary combinations. So this is something that I had done many, many years ago, and I felt like it was me on paper, and that encouraged me to start learning about charts. It was such a important experience for me. And so to be able to facilitate that in other people is such a gift. And so if you go onto the Cosmogram website, you'll actually get to see and download, if you want, a sample copy. So you'll get to know exactly what it is that you're going to get. And then you can decide to enter your birth data and join us. Join us with whatever it is I offer. Okay, so now I think I'm going to go, but I'm very, very happy. I'm so very happy to be presenting you guys with all these incredible speakers, incredible classes. The enthusiasm that you guys have for learning astrology has just amazed me. The enthusiasm that you've had for my classes, for the speaker series, is just so deeply meaningful to me. To share astrology in this whole new way and on this whole other level beyond just horoscopes. And of course, my superstars who do access my horoscopes, all of it, it just means so much to me. So thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you again for watching. I'll see you on social media and it'll be a great week. Enjoy.